Italian newspapers published further inflammatory
As a record.
Doing here. Cantona's got him attack a ban.
Football has witnessed moments of rage, betrayal, and disrespect that have left fans shocked. These are not just errors, they are a failure of sportsmanship and an emergence of chaos. Buckle up as we journey into shocking moments where footballers abandon sportsmanship and fair play is a luxury. 1.
Look at this.
The 2006 World Cup final was supposed to be an incredible goodbye ceremony for the world football legend Zinedine Zidane. This legendary French midfielder had already well cemented his amazing legacy in the world of football, and hoisting the World Cup trophy in victory would have made for the perfect ending to his illustrious and successful career. However, during the nail-biting moments of extra time versus Italy, the whole situation took a dramatic twist that would alter everything.
Was there any provocation?
Marco Materazzi, the Italian defender, had been involved in a heated exchange of words with Zidane during the game, as they both fought intensely on the field. It was later revealed and became public knowledge that Materazzi had directed a profoundly offensive remark at Zidane's sister, which ultimately instigated one of the most shocking and memorable moments in the history of football.
What happened here? Oh, goodness me! Goodness me! Zinedine Zidane's career!
Reacting to this provocation, Zidane suddenly turned around and forcefully headed directly for Materazzi's chest with his head, causing him to fall onto the ground. The referee, having witnessed this event take place, had no other choice but to give a red card and send Zidane off the pitch. As Zidane walked past the iconic World Cup trophy, he went down the tunnel, drawing a sad end to his glittering career that finished under a cloud of shame. France went on to lose the penalty shootout, and it left a lot of fans questioning and wondering what would have been if things had turned out differently. Zidane's instant of anger and frustration will live on in infamy for everyone who witnessed it. However, there was another player who took the situation of poor sportsmanship to an entirely different level by ultimately betraying his own teammate in events that transpired off the field. Second, Mauro Icardi.
And somehow they found a way to do stuff behind Maxi's back. We do not know when exactly they got caught, but the situation put the last nail in the power came when Icardi tattooed the names of Maxi's 3 kids on his...
Once touted as one of the brightest and most talented players in the storied history of Inter Milan, saw his reputation go up in flames spectacularly when it emerged that he had had an affair with Wanda Nara, who just so happened to be the wife of his then teammate, Maxi Lopez. This particular scandal rocked the world of football, causing shockwaves and raising eyebrows across the globe.
Lopez, who relished the moment, wasted no time in asking his follow. To make matters worse, Wanda got married to the 21-year-old Icardi about 5 months after in a private ceremony in Buenos Aires that accommodated only about 12 relatives. But a month before the wedding,
When Inter Milan faced Lopez's side, which is known as Torino, in 2018, a great deal of attention was focused on the handshake that traditionally occurs before the match begins. In a surprising turn of events, Lopez chose to refuse the handshake with Icardi, which served only to further fan the controversy of the ordeal.
And somehow they found a way to do stuff behind Maxi's back. We do not know when exactly they got caught, but the situation put the last nail in the coffin. The power came when Icardi tattooed the names of Maxi's 3 kids on his body.
This saga continued to dog Icardi for several years, ultimately impacting his career negatively and leading him to become one of the most controversial figures in the sport of football. Although Icardi's betrayal was committed outside the boundaries of the pitch, some acts of bad sportsmanship are acted out in full view of the world under the very spotlight of publicity for everyone to witness. One such act was when one of the all-time great strikers simply lost his head in a way that left people watching around the world in disbelief. Third,
Who ran into a Palace player. The ref showed a red card for Eric.
January 25, 1995, is a very important and memorable day in the hearts and minds of Manchester United supporters worldwide. On that day, Eric Cantona, the club's supposedly top striker and one of its most famous players, had just been red-carded and ejected from the field while playing against Crystal Palace when he unexpectedly performed something that was quite unimaginable.
What's he doing here? Cantona's gone into the crowd to attack a fan.
As he was leaving the field of play after the match, one irate Crystal Palace fan launched a stream of abuse his way. Rather than simply shrugging off the insults and continuing on his way, Cantona, in a quick and dramatic movement, jumped over the advertising boards with resolve and delivered a firm kung fu kick directly into the fan's chest, followed quickly by a flurry of punches in his direction. With that incident, the ground abruptly descended into complete silence, with all those present watching what was happening, left in a state of shock and disbelief at what had just transpired. Cantona received an 8-month suspension from football, a significant disciplinary action, and in addition to this, he was also sentenced to complete 120 hours of community service. Remarkably, to this day, he remains unapologetic about his actions, famously calling it the best moment of his career, which illustrates the complex nature of his feelings regarding that incident. While Cantona's infamous attack on a fan stirred considerable controversy, it is noteworthy that some players within the sport have shown absolutely no mercy toward their opponents during competitive play. Such actions have sometimes resulted in career-ending consequences for those involved, highlighting the darker side of competitive sports. 4. Roy Keane was certainly the toughest and most feared midfield player in Premier League history, renowned for his combative style of play and battle on the pitch. However, his infamous tackle on Alf-Inge Haaland that took place in the year 2001 was more than a tough challenge. It was, in fact, a premeditated act of vengeance.
In a match between Leeds and Nottingham Forest in September 1997, Keane suffered a serious knee injury after a challenge on Haaland. Haaland, who was playing for Leeds at the time, reportedly taunted Keane as he lay injured on the ground.
Years earlier, Haaland had used the opportunity to mock Keane at a time when Keane was recuperating from an injury, suggesting quite boldly that Keane was actually feigning injury for attention. Keane never forgot that moment.
Who harboured a grudge against Haaland for years to come, given a 3-match ban and fined £150,000.
Fate brought the two of them together again in the highly anticipated Manchester derby. Keane knew that the moment of revenge was his. He went in for the tackle with a nasty knee-high, studs-up tackle that sent Haaland rolling in pain on the ground. Keane later openly confessed in his autobiography that the tackle he had made was, in fact, intentional, and he went on to say that he did not feel guilty for what he had done. As a result of the injury incurred, Haaland never fully recovered and soon found himself being forced into retiring from football just a few years later. Keane was reprimanded for what he had done, as he was fined and banned from playing. But by this time, the damage had already been done and could not be undone. Speaking of damage in a more general sense, one particular football legend didn't just verbally devastate an opponent on the field of play. He went on to shame and humiliate an entire country in the process. 5.
You're even more ugly in television than reality.
En nu dan, je schiet ook.
Zlatan Ibrahimovic has a reputation for being impossibly confident, a personality trait that defines how he presents himself and interacts with the world. However, occasionally, this confidence spills over into what can be perceived as outright disrespect for others.
Because if he's in his prime, how old is he?
Carlos Vela's 29.
29. He's playing in MLS and he's in his prime. When I was 29, where was I?
A good example of this occurred in 2019, when Carlos Vela won the MLS MVP designation, a significant accomplishment within the sport of soccer. In an attempt to rebut this honor, Zlatan went on to minimize the significance of Vela's accomplishment.
3-2 with only seconds left.
However, Zlatan's infamous sharp tongue was not always exclusive to his teammates and opponents. In 2015, following PSG's disastrous loss with a score of 2-3 to Bordeaux, he unleashed a furious and passionate tirade that caught the eye of everyone.
Le Pen, the leader of the French far-right party, wasn't having this. It told Zlatan to leave the country if he didn't like it here.
His inflammatory comments triggered a storm of outrage across France, eliciting comments from all corners. Even the French ambassador could not help but comment, stating, "If Zlatan doesn't like it here, he should leave." Because of the increasing public backlash against PSG, the club had to go so far as to force him to apologize for what he had stated. Although Zlatan's words were certainly raw and uncut, there were other players who chose to let their actions do the talking. Such actions at times expressed themselves in a manner completely at odds with the requirements of fair play, showcasing attitudes which were most unexpected and surprising. 6. Luis Suarez has been involved in his fair share of controversial moments in the past, but biting humans is something entirely different. Back in 2010, when he was playing for Ajax, Suarez bit Otman Bakal on the shoulder. He was banned for 7 games, but it seems like he did not learn anything from that episode. In 2013, while playing for Liverpool, he bit Chelsea's Branislav Ivanovic. This time, he received a ban of 10 games. The most egregious offense was in the 2014 World Cup, when he bit Italy's Giorgio Chiellini. FIFA handed him a 4-month suspension from any football activity. There are some types of unsportsmanlike behavior that amount to dirty tricks, and others are just outright aggressive. 7. Sergio Ramos is known to be a strong defender, although sometimes he is too aggressive. In the heated 2010 El Clasico, Ramos lost his cool by shoving Barcelona's Carles Puyol after a tackle, which resulted in a red card. It was not the first time Ramos let emotions get the best of him. In another game, he pushed Sydney following a physical confrontation, displaying that he wouldn't be intimidated. It was another display of his hot-headedness. Then came Lionel Messi. The legendary duels of Ramos and Messi boiled over when Ramos lost control. Having lost the ball, he slid in wildly, taking out Messi completely. The foul was so egregious that even his own teammates were horrified. The moment that sealed the fate of Ramos's reputation was the 2018 Champions League final. He brought down Liverpool's biggest threat, Mohamed Salah, after causing a severe shoulder injury. Salah left in tears, with many suspecting Ramos to have done it on purpose. From reckless tackles that seemed almost negligent to outright aggression that was unmistakable, these episodes easily demonstrated that for Ramos, the divide between passion and destruction was frequently blurred and difficult to discern. An all-out chaos is awaiting because sometimes a match doesn't just get heated, it turns into a full-scale war. From brutal tackles to full-blown brawls, these next games weren't just about football. They were battles where discipline and sportsmanship were completely forgotten. 8.
The host nation, Chile, was still recovering from the devastating Valdivia earthquake of 1960.
The Battle of Santiago was more than a soccer match. It was a vengeful clash of national prestige and intensity. Chilean papers had published mocking stories about Italy before the 1962 World Cup, to which Italian journalists retaliated by mocking the conditions of life in Chile.
In the wake of the disaster, Italian journalists criticised the decision to allow Chile.
As the teams took the field in Santiago, the tensions were already high. Pandemonium erupted from the start. Italy's Giorgio Farini was sent off early for a brutal tackle, but stubbornly refused to leave the field until the police were forced to remove him, opening the door for the ensuing chaos.
Italian newspapers published further inflammatory comments between Chile and Italy.
Fouls were exchanged like blows. Chile's Lionel Sanchez, furious with Italy's Mario David, punched him in the face, but was not penalized by the referee. David retaliated by kicking Sanchez in the head with a flying kick and was sent out of the game, leaving Italy with 9 men.
And there's 10 minutes play.
The game turned violent, with players kicking, punching, and elbowing each other. Referee Ken Aston was helpless, not being able to keep the match in hand. Police had to be called in multiple times to break up altercations between players. Chile won 2-0 amidst the violence, and the game is notorious for its brutality. The Battle of Santiago is a grim reminder of the anarchic possibilities of football. Ken Aston, the match official, later helped resolve this issue. After seeing similar chaos in the 1966 World Cup, he proposed a simple idea: yellow and red cards, inspired by traffic lights. Yellow for caution and red for stop. His system made its debut at the 1970 World Cup, transforming the manner in which referees policed the game. The Battle of Santiago highlighted the need for better discipline, being one of the most notorious matches in World Cup history. If the Battle of Santiago was a display of raw aggression in an era with little regulation, the Battle of Nuremberg proved that even with strict officiating, chaos could still reign on the pitch. Portugal versus Netherlands in the 2006 World Cup turned into a card fest. 9. The quarter-final at the 2006 FIFA World Cup between the Netherlands and Portugal is legendary. Dubbed the Battle of Nuremberg, the match was more than a soccer contest. It was a full-blown battle. Neither side gave an inch from the beginning. The tackling was frenzied and tempers flared as referee Valentin Ivanov struggled in vain to keep it under control. A record 16 yellow cards were subsequently brandished, a World Cup record. 4 red cards were also issued, and both teams were left with 9 men apiece by the time the final whistle was blown. One of the most infamous moments occurred when Khalid Boularus aggressively attacked Cristiano Ronaldo and injured him. This sparked retaliatory attacks from both sides. Fists nearly flew. Players theatrically fell to the ground, and every referee decision was greeted with indignant protests. The game descended into chaos when Deco and Giovanni van Bronckhorst were both red-carded in the second half after a succession of brawls, with coaches and substitutes also joining in the violent disputes. Portugal triumphed 1-0, marred by mayhem. FIFA admitted referee Valentin Ivanov lost control, with Sepp Blatter also condemning the refereeing. The Battle of Nuremberg is among the most unsavory in World Cup history, where animosity eclipsed football. 10th. Few Premier League games have been as chaotic as Manchester United versus Arsenal on September 21, 2003. The Battle of Old Trafford was a pride and aggression game between arch-rivals.
Van Nistelrooy.
Action reached a boiling point as Ruud van Nistelrooy stepped up to take a penalty. Earlier, he had squared up to Patrick Vieira, who was red-carded after kicking him. The Arsenal players, seeking vengeance, erupted when Van Nistelrooy's penalty rebounded off the crossbar.
Jude is always looking for provocation.
After the final whistle, Arsenal players, led by Keown, Lauren and Parlour, closed in on Van Nistelrooy. Pushing and shoving him in a notorious show of unsportsmanlike behaviour, Keown celebrated aggressively in Van Nistelrooy's face. The FA issued draconian bans and fines. Arsenal was charged with failing to control players, 6 of whom were punished. Keown, Lauren and Parler were banned, while Vieira and Ashley Cole were fined. Arsenal completed their legendary invincible season with a league unbeaten record. The Battle of Old Trafford is among the most dramatic encounters in Premier League history, where passion took over the match. Football has given us moments of magic, but also moments of pure madness. Which of these stood out to you the most? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more football stories.